Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
And here we are. Of course, today we are doing Torah Temimah. We are working on Noah, on the Parshat of Noach, and I'm just going to make this going to try and see if I can make it bigger. For some reason, I'm having difficulty, but whatever. Okay, well, that's too big now. There we go. All right. So we're talking about, let's see how we are. We're on verse 14, and that's right here. And we're talking about this is where they came into the ark. Right. So we're talking about, oh yeah, Hema, they, V'chol hachaya lemina, and all the animals according to their species, V'chol habeima lemina. So we make a distinction between chaya, which are basically like wild animals, and behema, which would be domesticated animals. But essentially, behema refers to like cattle, sheep, and goats, right? V'chol haremes haromes al haaretz. So we said all those the creatures, right? Al haaretz, leminehu, according to their species, v'chol ha'of leminehu, and all the birds according to their species. Look, and then it goes on, right? V'chol tzipor kol kanaf, and all birds of all wing, literally of every wing. But it's interesting, there's a duplication here, right? Of and Sipor. Sipor. So let's take a look at that, right? Called Sipor. Here we go. Gomer. Called Sipor, called Kanaf, right? So this duplication, all bird, all winged, of every wing. So he says Tzipor, the word Tzipor refers to Tahor, that is to say, pure birds, Kanaf Tameh, impure birds.
Maybe
So,
bats.
no, we're talking about vultures and cormorants and eagles and ravens, etc. They're all kinds of they're all kinds of birds that are listed. So what's interesting is that the birds that are not kosher are the ones listed in the Torah. And that's basically, it's interesting because kosher and tameh is not synonymous necessarily. But here we are talking presumably about that. That I'm going to assume.
Cormorants are on the list because they're really more, I think, related to ducks and geese than to raptor birds.
I understand, but I think but I don't, I could be wrong. When it comes to translating these birds, right, from the Torah, we depend heavily on tradition because they're simply names. And the rabbis did an amazing job trying to see if they could broaden, understand what was common amongst the pure birds and what was common amongst the impure birds. But the fact that it mentions the impure birds would seem to suggest that there are more pure birds than there are impure ones. But yeah, I could be wrong. I seem to recollect cormorants because the heron is and the stork is, so it seems like I think cormorants are part of that, like those kind of birds. But I could be wrong. Maybe if we ever come to study that area, we'll be able to tell better.
Well,
Okay.
those are waders. I mean, I
Yeah,
think cormorant's
yeah.
more like a duck, as I say,
Could
but
be, could be. I do not, this
I
is
can't
not,
even picture what a cormorant is.
I've got some photos, but I've got thousands, so it'd be hard to find them.
yeah, I don't want to look for it right now, but maybe another time I can do it. I
Yeah.
don't want to take the time right now. So let's take a look. So interesting. It's an interesting comment, right? Interesting deduction. So he says, Nismach al hamavu'ar bekama makomot. He says he's relying here, this statement is relying on something that is clarified in several places. Destam shem tzipor, that when it talks about the word tzipor, the noun tzipor, kolel rak min tohorim, that refers only to pure birds, pure species. Kafishi Ma'er, as will become clarified, Imyotze Hashem, God willing, Lefanenu, ahead of us, but Parshat Teitzei, in the Parsha of Ki Teitzei. That's in the book of Deuteronomy. We should live so long to get there, at least with Torah Temimah. But at any rate, we will take a look at it, or have with Rashi. At any rate, that's what he's telling us. The pasuk and the verse that says Ki yikare ken sipor. It's referring to the mitzvah that if you come across a bird's nest, right, in Parsha Ki Teitzei, it's one of the new laws that aren't mentioned elsewhere, but the new laws mentioned in the book of Deuteronomy, where if you come upon a bird's nest and the mother is resting on her fledglings, you chase away the mother, you shoo away the mother, and you can take the fledglings, but you can't take both. And it's an interesting law there. So apparently the issue of does it refer only to pure birds, does it, etc., etc., I can surmise. The imkain, and if this is the case, mikevan de beteva havu gam tohorim v'gam tmeim, and in this is the case, since in the ark they were both pure and impure, V'acharei de tzipor hakatuv kan kolel torim, and since the tzipor mentioned here in this verse includes the pure, al kain, for this reason, de veshem kanaf kalul tmeim, and for that reason I think you could almost say, we require this word kanaf, or that we can understand that this word kanaf includes the impure birds. Ve'yein od lefanenu, and see ahead, vide, right, again, down the lines, also the Parshat Re'eh, in the Parsha Re'eh, and Re'eh also is in Deuteronomy, the Pasuk, and I believe in Re'eh we might find some laws of kashrut being repeated, the Pasuk in the verse, Kol Tzipor Torah Tochelu, where it says, every pure bird you shall eat. So there's analysis ahead of us, right, involving what is meant when we talk about tzipor, etc. So, kol kanaf, of every wing. Darash Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar was interpreting kol kanaf, the fact that it says of every wing, all wing, right? Prat, this would leave out, this would accept lamurtim or moratim. I think it's mortim. That is, ones that have their feathers torn out. She'asurim livnei Noach lekorban, who were forbidden for the sons of Noah as an offering. And excuse me, of course, sons of Noah, we mean humanity, right? We make the distinction between the children of Israel, Bnei Israel, and Bnei Noach. And Bnei Noach, of course, is the descendants of Noah, which would essentially include all humanity. And they also have their laws regarding sacrifices. And if it doesn't have if it has the feathers torn out, it is not considered an appropriate sacrifice. Let's take a look. Right here, Ritzono Lomar. What he's trying to say here is Nimritu hanotzot, that the feathers were torn out, ve'ein haknaf shalem, so that the wing is no longer whole. Right? It says all wing, the whole wing, kol kanaf, the entire wing, ve'lo nikra kol kanaf. So in that case, because it doesn't have all the wings, right? Its feathers, it cannot be considered all wing. So they were not included on the ark. They could not be part of the birds that would be included. All right. Going on, new idea. So we have a few verses here, right? So Vayavo el Noach el Teva, they came to Noah in the ark, to the ark, Shnaim mikol habasar, 2 by 2, right, in pairs of all flesh, living creatures, right? Asher borachamim, which had in it the breath of life. V'habaim, and those coming, Zachar unekefa, they were male and female, mikol basar ba'u, of all flesh came kasher tziva oto Elohim, just as God had commanded him, vayiskor Hashem ba'ado, and the Lord closed it for them, right, against them, closed up the ark. Vayhi hamabul, and the mabul, right, this destructive force, arba'im yom, 40 days over the earth. Let's see here. We have one. Right, so we have this verse here. Right. There's no footnote here. He says that Chaim Ayin La'el b'pasuk aleph v'chet. He says check above in verses 1 and 8. I believe where it says Habaim has to do with the idea that they came of themselves, that Noah didn't have to go around looking for them, but that they essentially came of themselves, just as God told them they would. All right, going on. Vayirbu hamayim, the waters exceeded, they multiplied, vayisu et teva, and they lifted up the ark, vataro me'al haaretz, and it was lifted high above the earth. Let's make sure I'm catching whatever verse is. All right, we've got another verse to go. At least looks like, yeah. All right. Vayigberu hamayim, the waters, basically it means they were very powerful. They overcame, as I would understand, they were mighty, right? The waters were mighty, vayirbu ma'od al haaretz, and they were great upon the earth, right? Just flooding the earth. Vatelech hateva, and the ark went al pnei hamayim, on the surface of the waters. V'hamayim gavru ma'od ma'od al haaretz, and again, the waters were, above, over the earth, very great. They were high over the earth. Vaychusu kol ha'arim, to the extent that they covered all the mountains, agboim, the high mountains, asher tachat kol hashamayim, under all the heavens, right, everywhere. Chamesh amah memala, 15 cubits above Gavru Hamayim. The waters exceed. So I think Gavru, we could talk exceeded, might be a good way to translate that word, right? The waters exceeded by Chusu Harim, and they covered up the mountains. And here we have a Torah Temimah. Chamesh Esrei Amah, 15 cubits. My Chamesh Esrei Amah, what are we talking about when we say 15 cubits? Ilmal Ilema tetvav ama be'emek. Are we saying, right? Should you say 15 cubits in the valley, tetvav ama bahar, and 15 cubits in the on the mountains? V'chimaya shori kaima. And since when do waters stay at different levels? Right? I mean, if it's over the valley, it's 15 cubits, and then as you climb up to the top of the mountain, still 15 cubits, doesn't matter. It's not possible. It doesn't work that way. The ud teva hechisagya, right? So as Torah Temimah is going to explain, because we can see there's a little footnote here, how could the ark rise to the level of the mountaintops, right? Can you see the ark sort of sliding up the sides of the mountains? Is that what was happening? So let's just take a look at what he says here. So it's your dalet. Ritzono lomar. What he's trying to say is chada lo yitachen. On the one lo yitachen. It's not possible sheyeh midat gova hamayim shaveh bahar uvaemek, that the measurement of the height of the water should be equal, right, in the mountains and in the valley. So that's one point. Water just doesn't act that way. V'od, and moreover, ha'ech alta ha'teva l'rashei ha'arim. How would the ark have risen to the tops of the mountains? Acharei shebechol makom, because bechol makom, if in every location, hayta shaveh midat hamayim, the measurement of the water was the same. So what are we talking about? Ella. However, what we can say is the ashvu mayim baharei turei, that the waters, of course, were of an equal level above the mountains, right? So in other words, that's the waters filled the earth, right, to the tops of the mountains. V'hadar, and the other, then again, tet vav ama lemala, the 15 cubits above Gavru Hamayim. They were then above another 15 cubits above the mountains. And we are going to look at Torah Temimah for an explanation of what the point is here. And we'll see. Give me a second. Here we go. Okay. Ritzono lomar. So what it's trying to say is al yedei geshamim gavru tetvav ama, that the means of the rains, in other words, the rainfall that was coming from the heavens, that gave the additional 15 cubits, or min hatom hom, however, from the great depths. Yatsut chila, the water came out of those great depths to begin with. Lemalot habakaot, right? In order to fill out the valleys and the low areas, ad shehishvu haharim, until the water that came from the great depths filled up, and to the point where the water was at the top of the mountains, and that's the 15 amah. That when it says the 15 Amma exceeded, right, it was coming from the rain. That's what it's trying to tell us. Not that when it says 15 cubits above the earth, that it was sort of somehow the water was just 15 cubits and was uneven, etc., etc. Okay? So, next. What are we doing here? Excuse me. Vayigva kol basar, and all flesh perished, haromes al haaretz, that crawled on the earth, ba'of, and the birds, right, the fowl, uva beima, and the cattle, uva chaya, and in the wild beasts, uva chol hasheretz hasheretz al haaretz, and again, we're talking about the swarming things that swarmed over the earth, v'chol ha'adam, and all humanity. Kol asher nishmat ruach hayim ba'apav, everything in which the breath of life was in its nostrils. Mikol asher b'charavam metu, everything that was on the dry land perished. They died. Ruach hayim ba'apav. So from this we learn an important principle, right? The breath of life in its nostrils. Melamed. So this teaches us shehikar chiyuta ba'apehu, that the very essence of being alive is to be found in the nostrils, right? So you understand. I think you may have seen pictures where they take like a mirror and they place it in front of a person's nostrils. And if there's nothing on the mirror, if there's no misting at all, they figure that the person is actually dead. I know that's not a criteria anymore, but regardless, this is how they understood things as to represent the fact that if a person wasn't breathing anymore, that was it. Done. Okay. Klomar, that is to say, Ikar habechina ladat. In other words, the essential test, ladat et hanir'eh kamet, one who appears to be dead. Im humet muchlat, if in fact he really is completely deceased. Or ki adayin yesh bo ruach chaim, or does this person have the breath of life, literally, right? In other words, is this person still alive, is what this is saying. Who it is, shero'im im yesh ruach bin bechotmo. They see if there is wind in his nostrils. Adain, yet. Maybe bechotmo. Adain yesh bo ruach chayut. If you see a sign of any breath in his nostrils, one knows that he still is alive, right? Ve'im lav, if not, harehu met vadai, we can consider him for certain to be dead. Has very practical implications, which we see coming up. I'll keep going. V'habachinot acherot ein lismoch alehem. However, other kinds of examinations are not, you cannot count on them, right? You cannot rely on them. V'nir'eh b'tama bavar, and it appears in the reasoning for this matter, mishum, for the reason, dehaneshama yotzet min ha'adam, because the life breath, right, or the aliveness, right, or the soul goes out of it leaves the person, b'derech sheba'a, in the same way that it arrived. In other words, we're talking about the very alive, that sense of being alive at all. It leaves the way it came. V'kevan shetchilat abiata hi derech ha'af, and because the way it originally arrived was through the nose, kamoshe katuv, as is stated, vayipach ba'apav nishmat chayim. Remember, it says God breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. Lachen sofa latzeit gamken, and for this reason, its conclusion is to exit gamken, also derech ha'af, by means of the nose. Vayitachen lomar, and one can say, demizeh hatam, that this is the essential reason, nohagin lomar, that one says, this is interesting, right, to say, laha'otesh, to someone who sneezes, asuta, gesundheit. That's the origin of the custom of saying gesundheit to a person when they sneeze. And he gives a reference, Ien Brachot Nun Gimel Aleph. Check out Tractate Brachot, the Babylonian Talmud, on page 53a, Uva Rashi, and in the Rashi. Vahu al pima de amar beyalkut, okay, and it follows what is stated in the Yalkut Shmoni. I'm sure he's talking about that Midrash. We've talked about it before. Parshat Lech, in Parsha Lech Lecha, right? Remez al zeh, an allusion to this, regarding this. The Ad Yaakov, that up until the time of Jacob, our patriarch, shelo haita chulsha, that there was no weakness, that a person didn't become weak kodem mita, prior to their death. Hayu meitim pitom, they would die suddenly, just boom, suddenly, al yedei atisha, by means of a sneeze. So they'd sneeze and they were gone. Shahaya adam otesh, because a person would sneeze, v'nishmato yitzet mimenu, and his soul would depart from him. V'zeh gam ken mipnei sha'af, and the reason is also that the nose, hu ha'ma'avar shebein hachayut v'hamita. And again, right, remember, sneezing through your nose, right? It is the passage between life and between being alive and being dead, right, to death. V'lachen, and for this reason, b'sha'a sha'adam otesh, and that's why when a person sneezes, hu alun l'sakana, he is possibly in danger. It's quite possible that he's in danger. Omrim lo asuta, and for this reason they say to him, gesundheit, right? Or, God bless you. But Rashi Berachot, and Rashi in the tractate Brachot Sham, there, Katav Vezeloshono, and he wrote there, quote, La'adam she'otesh, that when a person sneezes, regilim lomar asuta, he says there, it is traditional to say to a person, gesundheit, adkan l'shono, and that's what he says simply there. Mashma, and so that implies the rak acherim. Look at this. He says that, in other words, in other words, only other people regilin lomar kain laotesh, to say such things to the one who is sneezing. V'lo haotesh atzmo, and not the person who's sneezing himself. You don't say bless me, right? You don't say that. It's others who have to say it. V'gam mavo'ar, and it is clarified, midvarav, from his words, the eno rak minhag. This isn't just a minhag, it isn't just a custom. Aval b'yalkut, but in the Yalkut, sham, there, ita chiyav adam, that a person is obligated, ba'atisha, that when a person sneezes, lohodot lakadosh baruch hu, to give thanks to the Holy One, blessed be He. All right, so now it's the person. When he sneezes, he has to give thanks to the Holy One, blessed be He, or acknowledge the Holy One, blessed be He. Mevu'ar, so it becomes clear. Sheyesh, you'll find the place. Chiyuv la'otesh atzmo, that there is an obligation for the one who's sneezing himself, lomar lashon hoda'ah, to give some acknowledgement of gratitude. Ve'yesh nohagin, and there are those who have the custom now, lomar lishuacha kiviti Hashem, that what you say, that the phrase that you use to acknowledge and thank God, and that your life is there, that you should continue to live, lishuacha, to your salvation, kiviti Hashem, I hope, I long for Lord, O Lord, I long for your salvation. This is actually in the middle of Jacob's blessing, quote, quote, to his sons prior to his leaving. Ulefi hamavuar, and according to what has been explained, minhag chiyuvi, it becomes not just a custom, it is an obligatory custom. Ve'efshar lomar, and one could say, de laha'otesh atzmo hu chiyuv, that for the one who sneezes himself, that is the obligation. Ula'acherim hu rak minhag, but with regards to others, it is simply a custom, mitam derech eretz, just by way of politeness, decency, etc. Ve'ein laharich ord, and there's no need to go any further into this. However, we're going to see that there is some more to be said about this, a little bit more in a whole different direction. And with this, I will stop today in the hopes that next time we get to this, we'll continue right here and finish up the thoughts about this here. And I'm going to stop the share. Okay. You have your moments for your questions or your comments or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, Bart.
Does it literally say Gesundheit in the? I can't read the.
No, it says asuta. That's what it is.
You're just mapping it. Good.
That's the Aramaic. I think it's Aramaic. Okay. But it means the same thing as Gesundheit.
Gesundheit means health in German.
Yes, it does. Well, there we go. You should stay healthy. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
But by the way, I will say this, even though we are probably going into our time here, that to do this, you don't do it though. You don't say Gesundheit when you're studying Torah or praying. So when you're at services and someone sneezes, it is not appropriate to say Gesundheit, because those activities of being in Tefillah and in being Talmud Torah are considered to be life-enhancing, and basically there are also some midrashim and stories and agadot of how David, the angel of death, could not take David's life because he was so focused on his studies. The angel of death could not take him, and what happened was the angel of death created a distraction, a noise outside. David was distracted, and that was it. So that's part of the implications of all of this. And with this, I'm going to stop the recording.